Tony Finau, Swing Analysis. What's up, guys? It's your favorite Q coach. Let's go do this thing.
Sometimes I wonder how I got here.
Alright guys, if you guys are new to Mike's OG Academy, do everything that you guys need to know about golf instruction, whether it be golf course vlogs, golf tip videos, golf swing analysis like this, golf interviews, again, everything you guys need to know about golf instruction, we do it here. So if you guys haven't already, hit that little red subscribe button and you guys will be notified every time we drop a video. Alright guys, so let's get into this swing analysis of Tony Finau. Currently right now he's playing in the Hero World Challenge. I believe he's tied for first at 13 under as of this time. Hopefully he goes on to win it. I know he's a really good guy. I got to see him play back in, I think, 2008 at the Pebble Beach. It was some mini tour event for Callaway. Really good player back then. Not quite sure if that was before the big break win or after. You guys can go fact check me if you guys want. But again, just a really cool guy in general. Got to talk to him a little bit, and as well, obviously a very good golfer. So first part of this analysis, we're going to talk about why he is such a good golfer, what I like that he's doing with this 3-wood. And as well, second part from there, we're going to go into kind of maybe some ideas that I would possibly change if I were his coach to help him get a little bit more consistent, because there are a few things that we would look at. So let's get into the first part. So if we take a look at his golf swing, he is hitting a 3-wood off a tee here, right? Which is very important because it's going to be a subtly different swing than he would if he hit 3-wood off the deck. So let's go into the first thing I want you guys to notice that I like that he does, okay? So the first thing is going to be tilts. Now tilts just means the sternum relative to the pelvis, whatever that angle is, basically kind of his tilt, right? So he's over here at 171 degrees. Now, you're not going to see too many players with that amount of degree of tilt with the 3-wood. That is a bit excessive, but again, if he's hitting 3-wood off the tee, he can kind of get away with it. But again, I do like to see that little preset tilt for a lot of players when you're hitting stuff off the tee. So that's pretty cool. So as we take him up to the top of his swing, we're going to see that he even moves the sternum further off the golf ball and gets a little bit more tilted. Then at the top, we kind of see him from here. He's kind of loading and pressure shifting into that trail foot. From here, a very classic look for him nowadays is he has a lot shorter backswing than he used to when he first kind of came out on the scene playing professional golf. A big reason why was because he was always a bomber, but he was trying to obviously get a little bit more consistency throughout his whole swing, so he got it a little bit more compact with his coach. And then he really started seeing some cool results, right? So that's why he has a little bit of a shorter swing than most. But we are starting to see some of those models pop up. I know JB Holmes is one of the first one I can kind of think of. There's obviously more before that, but from there as well, there's players like John Rahm that are kind of doing it right now, and then possibly some other you guys can bring up in the comment section below if you guys want. From here, as he starts pressure shifting into the golf ball, we're going to kind of see that his sternum pretty much just stays where it's at. And then from here, right around position 6, we're going to see something interesting that a lot of great drivers of the golf balls, or even people who hit, whenever you hit something off the tee, this is pretty much what they do. And you can see the head almost move back a whole head right there as he hits up into the golf ball, right? So basically what he's doing, he's shifting attack angle slightly up to relative to where it would be if he had not done that move. And he also, from there, has a really cool drive and hole release pattern. And I want you guys to kind of look at this too, because I love this. So if we erase this line and we kind of zoom in on his wrist conditions here, basically what he's doing here is he's still holding on to flexion, right? Which is kind of this revving the motorcycle look. He's holding on to that. He's holding on to the extension of the wrist a little bit, kind of a split second after impact. So if this was impact, he's holding on to it to about here. And then we kind of start seeing it flip and roll over from there. But all that really means is that he had a really stable rate of closure through the impact zone. If we take him back one more click, we can also see that the club face is in a pretty good position here, right? The toe is not open. So let's say this arrow right here would represent the toe being pretty open in this kind of position. And where he's at basically right here is, people could call that maybe square to the arc, is something that you guys have probably heard. But all I kind of like to say for my students when I tell them this is just, his club face is in a position where he doesn't have to have a lot of supination late to square it up. He can almost kind of just, the feeling, not really realistically, the feeling is just keep it square forever through that impact zone is kind of probably what he's feeling. And I love that. And that's a great way to kind of have control over your distance, is just having a nice rate of closure, right? You want the toe to turn over, right? But you don't want to turn it over very rapidly. That's kind of rate of closure ideas and how to become more consistent with that philosophy. So those are a few things I really like about his golf swing that I think he does a great job of, and the reason why he has the length and he also has accuracy as well, correct? So he's doing a really good job. Now, in terms of things that I would change, let's shift gears to the second part of this analysis. I would change a few things in setup as well as kind of in-swing dynamics. So before we go into the changes at setup, let's kind of take note of what he's doing with his trail foot in the backswing. We're going to see something interesting that you don't see a lot of tour players do, but let's take a look. So as he gets up to about his takeaway here, let's kind of zoom in on the foot and let's kind of watch what's happening. So as he's getting up to the top of his swing, we can almost see that he's rolling his pressure outside the instep. So he's getting a little bit of this look, which you don't see a lot of tour players do. Cool, now let's zoom out a little bit just so we can get a reference to where he's at in his golf swing. So he's somewhere here at the top of his golf swing right before transition, and he has a lot of pressure on the outside part of his foot. Now, I know I took this video from his Instagram account. He said something that he was working on posting up a little bit more efficiently on his lead side when he was taking this video, so I guarantee that him and his coach are definitely trying to work on that little move that he has right there on the backswing, because whenever you get pressure rolling a little bit too far on the outside, it's kind of hard to post up on your lead side, and you really kind of messes up how you push your pressure forward. And typically players either get a little bit too much linear push whenever they kind of get this look on the backswing, or they almost kind of just stay and hang back on that trail side foot and really get no power and don't really use the ground effectively, right? So I guarantee that's something that him and his coach are talking about here. Cool. Now, as we start transitioning down, we're going to see something interesting as well. Let's watch that foot. So from this click to this click, we're almost seeing the heel, and we'll zoom in a little bit more, kicking a little bit inwards, right? So it's almost kicking this way. Let's watch it. Right here, then right here, you can definitely see it, right? So his back foot is almost sliding a little bit, right? So the reason why it's trying to slide is because right now, a lot of players in their transition, whenever they start turning downwards, when you get that rotational effect, as well as a linear pressure shift, basically what you're doing is you're creating all these little forces that are directing in certain ways to help you rotate and push and just use the ground effectively. Now, because his heel was like this and his pressure was on the outstep, when he started to do those motions, he almost got a little bit of this look, and it almost kind of just slipped on the ground a little bit, just because his pretty much the whole pad of his foot wasn't gripping the ground because it wasn't flat on the ground at this position. So it gets that little slippage look. I would argue losing him maybe a little bit of pressure with the ground and just maybe not allowing him to use the ground as effectively as he could if his foot was a little bit more flat on the ground at the top of the swing. Now, as he starts going a little bit further down into the golf ball, right about here, we're going to start seeing that the foot is now starting to plant onto the ground, and we're going to start seeing him kind of rolling this foot this way and kicking that knee into internal rotation, right, which is this trail side knee right here. So we'll go back a frame, and then now we can see it start to plant, and now it's going to start kicking in an internal rotation. From here, his footwork is really, really good, right? So he starts to kind of roll on that foot. And then it kind of, for my liking, I would say it's almost a little flat-footed through impact. And then right about here, he starts to kind of roll that foot and kind of kick up a little bit. But all in all, obviously, he's playing at a very high level, and he's got a great golf swing, and I do think his footwork is very good. But if we're going to be perfectionists here, I would say that maybe he needs to tidy up his pivot a little bit and that footwork a little bit so he can start using the ground a little bit more effectively. And let's kind of go into some of the reasons why I think he's kind of getting that little move there. So the first reason, we're going to go hop over his down the line view and just draw from the balls of the feet straight up. We're just going to kind of draw an arrow. So at setup, Tony Finau has a lot of pressure or weight into the heels basically. So he's kind of backing up a little bit at setup. Now from here, what we're going to notice, if I draw a line on his head, we're going to see that he starts, whenever you see players have a lot of pressure on the heels at setup, they typically, not all the time, but they typically are going to move their head into the golf ball like Tony does. So watch this. See how Tony kind of moves into the golf ball? This way, right? Now when I see, the only reason why I bring this up, whenever I see players kind of set up on the heels, move their head closer into the golf ball, what it does is it tilts the left side of the pelvis a little low right here. And from there, whenever you tilt the left side pelvis or left pelvic tilt in the backswing a little excessively, it's kind of hard to get your hips churning and get hip depth, right? Whenever the hips don't churn, I see a lot of players get their pressure or weight rolling onto the outside of a foot like that, which is exactly what Tony's doing, right? Now, obviously, it's a very, very small difference, or very, very small amount relative to like your typical amateur who does this motion, but it is something that's still in this golf swing. Remember guys, professionals have all the little tiny mistakes that amateurs do. It's just at a very, very refined amount. Cool. So from here, as we see, he gets in closer to the golf ball. That's where we can also see on this view, his foot starting to do that same little motion. We can see the pressure going onto the outstep of the foot. And then it kind of gets that little spinny move, and then it plants right about here is when it planted back onto the instep. So how would we change this? Well, a few ways to change it. First things with setup, I would get him standing a little bit taller in the knees, maybe standing a little bit further away from the golf ball and getting a little bit more pressure back onto the balls of the feet and getting it a little bit more 50-50 at setup. That's something he could do with body track with his coach pretty easily, and I'm sure that's something they brought up in the past and that they're probably constantly working on, because players typically have their models that they like to fall back into under pressure just because it kind of feels normal and it feels a little bit less just whenever you're under pressure, you always kind of fall back to what feels comfortable, right? And that's pretty much probably what Tony Finau is doing in these scenarios that his coach and him are probably working on. Now, second thing from there, let's just take a look at stance width here. So as we can see, stance width is relatively narrow compared to a lot of bombers these days. I would probably get a stance width a little bit more wide, just a little bit more width in that stance, as well as for Tony, I might as even kind of flare this trail side foot out a little bit more and get this lead foot a little bit less flared out. I know he's trying to flare that foot out to get a little bit more rotation on the downswing, but I think he's just flaring it a little bit more out than I would like to see personally. So let's say this is relative to let's say this would be kind of a neutral and this would be pretty flared out, right? Maybe somewhere around here, a little bit less would be kind of what I would like to see. Now from there, what I would talk about with Tony is in the backswing. Let's do the down the line view because it's easier to see from this view. In the backswing, as he gets up top his swing, what I would really work on with Tony is I would get this trail side knee extending a little bit more. Obviously not hyper extending, but he's over at 153. I would like to see him more so kind of 168 to 171 range, and just getting that to extend a little bit more, which is going to allow the hips to churn a little bit more, which I think, going back to this kind of trail foot idea, that's going to help him get his footwork a little bit better, and he's not going to get the pressure rolling on the outstep of the foot. And from there, I think he's going to have a lot better chance to kind of grip the ground and use the ground a little bit more effectively, and he's going to be able to post up on the lead side the way that him and his coach want him to. I think that's a big step for him in the future possibly, and if his coach is watching, I'm sure that's something he's probably already talked about with him, and they're probably working on changing already, and if not, I'm sure they're going to try to change it pretty quick here. So anyways guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed that analysis. I think there was definitely some really cool take-home points in review. Having a little bit of a preset tilt at setup when you're hitting something off the tee is a great idea for a lot of you amateurs out there to do. Second thing from here, making sure that your sternum is not moving forward with the teed up shots, and almost if anything staying there to moving slightly back is a great idea as well. His ideas around rated closure, or that we brought up, making sure that he almost has a little bit more of this look just a split second after the golf ball for you amateurs is a great feel for you guys to get a little bit more control over the club face. And then as well, for some of the ideas that he's doing incorrectly, I think is a great idea for you guys, or for you amateurs. Everyone can have a perfect setup, so making sure that you have your pressure points, I like to call them, or George calls them too. A lot of famous instructors are calling it now that. But basically, pressure points just means if you're looking at body track, 50-50 with weight distribution relative to 50% pressure on the toes, 50% pressure on the heels at setup, is more so what I would like to see Tony do. And I think a lot of you guys as well should do. And from there, I think it just sets you guys up to have a little bit better pivot and just a little bit easier chance to use the ground the way that we want it to. All right, guys, so if you guys haven't already, feel free, smash that like button, leave me a comment, let me know how we did. And as always, guys, hit that little red subscribe button down there. All right, guys, best of luck and play some golf out there.
Sometimes I might look like an asshole. Yeah, I might.